Hello everyone, and today we're going to be discussing one of the lesser known anti-meta options that has actually found its way onto the tier list sitting at tier 3 in the form of Exosisters. Now this is a deck that over the last number of weeks of March I had been ranting and raving about like crazy, and anyone who has played it since probably knows why. It's really freaking good. Now we're playing it slightly differently than we covered in our previous videos, of course. We're taking advantage of Dimensional Fissure and DD Crow. But honestly, most of the gameplay stays the same. We are going to be doing a card for card at the end, so if you're interested in that, stick around. And if you are playing Exosisters already, then feel free to let me know down below any suggestions, any mistakes, any cards you should play, shouldn't play, whatever it is you want to do, leave it down below, and I'll get around to everybody. But yeah, we're not going to build anything up. We got some games lined up. We're going to go through some replays, then we're going to do a deck profile at the end. Let's get on with it. Alrighty, we're going to open up with a nice and simple one here. We're going to start with Dimensional Fissure, of course, being amazing. Packs, being able to search our deck for any Exosister card, adding it to our hand. We're going to add Marfa, which is the big bad boss. Marfa's going to summon itself and Ellis out to the field from the deck. We're going to go into Caspatel here. Caspatel being able to detach a card to search our deck for any Exosister monster, which is basically extending out a little bit. Going to normal Stella. Stella's effect then lets us special summon Sophia, which will allow us to draw. We hit another Marfa, which is useful for next turn. We're going to go Michaelis. Now Michaelis is going to grab us a trap card from the deck. We're going to add Returnia to our hand. Now we're going to Exceed summon using 2 Exceed monsters into Magnifica. Setting 2 and passing. So this is the ideal end board. Magnifica plus Returnia. If you have other interruptions, fantastic. But as part of your combo, you're basically looking to get into Magnifica and Returnia every single time, which is a total of banishing 4 cards your opponent controls. So Magnifica will banish 1, and also resummon Michaelis, which will banish 1, and Returnia will banish 2. 4 banishes. Plus, we have Dimensional Fissure, so they can't really play from their graveyard, plus we have Imperm. So it's a really tough situation for our opponent to play through here. They're going to draw a card for turn, and I'm pretty sure, yeah, they just scoop it up. So I wanted to give you just a quick glimpse at what the ideal-ish sort of end board looks like, some of the card effects, some of the processes. Some of that made sense. If you watched my previous Exosister video, then all of that made sense. If you haven't watched that, then keep watching this one and stick around for the deck profile. It's all going to make sense. Alrighty, getting into our second game here. Again, a hand isn't quite as good as last time, and looks like we're playing against Max C, so that's a bit of a problem. We're going to special summon out Ellis from hand using Stella's effect. We're going to go into Michaelis, giving them 2 draws, attempting to grab Returnia off of Michaelis, but we're going to get negated. That basically means that we allowed him to draw a card without giving ourselves any form of interruption. So we still do have a Maxi, we still do have DD Crow. We're just going to have to hope that that's enough to stave him off for at least a turn. It all depends on what he's playing. He's going to set 3 and then go into Fish Sonar. Looks like they're playing Umi Control, which is a very interesting time to be playing that. Umi then being sent to the graveyard for the Jellyfish. We're going to chain to that our Maximum C. We don't really want to be getting our opponent too much ahead of ourselves. We're going to draw a card off the Megalo Smasher. They're just going to go into Baguska here. The idea, of course, being to just wear us down and wear us out, but we did draw the Infinite Impermanence. See Stealth Attack being activated. We're going to quickly use DD Crow to banish that field spell from the graveyard. The reason we're doing that is that field spell's name is treated as Umi, and then See Stealth Attack has the ability to activate an Umi from the hand or graveyard. So hopefully he doesn't have one in his hand, otherwise he probably would have used it, but we're able to banish the one from the graveyard at the very least, which is pretty awesome for us. We're going to go D-Fissure here. It's going to banish anything sent to the graveyard. He, of course, has Macrocosmos, so he's playing something quite similar. So this isn't going to be the most impactful card in the world, but we're still going to play it. Now at the end of the turn, we're going to activate our Returnia. Returnia is going to banish the card he just set, which was a Solemn Judgment. What an amazing hit from us here. We didn't banish the Baguska because we don't need to. We have Infinite Impermanence. We're going to activate the Imperm, negate the Baguska, go into Sophia, go into Ellis, start comboing off here. Michaelis is going to grab us another copy of Returnia from the deck. That's why we play 2. We're going to go into Caspatel here. Caspatel detaching material. It's going to grab us a Marfa directly from the deck, which can special summon it if you don't control any monsters or if you only control Exceed monsters, as well as an Ellis from the deck. Going into Mikalis, of course, having the ability to banish a face down card. The Storming Mirror Force from our opponent, they were just ready for us. Magnifica then using its effect to banish the Baguska, so much banishing going on, removing his entire defensive field, swinging 28, swinging another 28, it can attack twice, and then 25 off of Mikalis for game. So they put up a valiant effort. They really did try to slow us down. They just didn't have it in them to finish the job, and that is where we come out on top. Excellent game. Let's get into the next one. Already getting into game 3 here. We've got the Marfa in hand, which is awesome. Marfa's basically a one-card starter. They have Maxi in this game as well, but luckily we were ready for it this time with our Called by the Grave. So we are going to stop this Maxi, and we're going to be able to play out our turn as we intended. So Marfa's going to come out. When Marfa is summoned using its effect, it's going to bring with it an Ellis from the deck. But now we're going to Exceed summon into Exosister or Caspatel. You're noticing, I'm sure you're noticing patterns by now. We're going into Caspatel to grab ourselves another monster. Then we're going into Mikalis to grab ourselves a trap card. So we're just searching out additional cards, grabbing ourselves there. We also get an extra draw off of Sophia, which is nice. Mikalis then is going to grab us a Returnia, which is awesome. And now we're going to Magnifica. Magnifica Returnia packs, pretty solid. Again, not quite as broken as our first game, but this is definitely solid. Grabbing ourselves the Vadis from the deck, why not? Vadis basically just allows us to special summon 2 Exosisters from the deck, although given our opponent here, they're going to go for Evenly Matched, which is going to banish our whole back row, unfortunately. They're going to go Foolish Burial, sending the Tackle Crusader. They're going to Tackle Crusader our Magnifica. Unfortunately, we have to use her effect early, so that we can tag her out into Mikalis. Basically, she'll bounce back one of the materials under her to the extra deck, and then you can summon that material using Magnifica as material. So we are here with Mikalis. Mikalis does get to banish something, which is neat, but it's certainly not as much as we would have intended. But again, our opponent used up way too much gas to get us that far down. They only had one play left, trying to summon the Seeker, hopefully getting some mileage off the Seeker, but no, we're not allowing it. Banish it, one card left in hand, easy dubs. Pretty straightforward stuff. A deck profile with no losses in it is nothing more than a shameless shill to try and sell you on a deck that you may not actually want to play. We attempt to go Pot of Prosperity here to fix this very disappointing hand, but unfortunately our opponent does have the Ash Blossom, so we're really just forced to set and pass. Hopefully the D-Fissure helps us enough here to get us to win the game, but they're playing Tenyi Sword Souls, I would imagine. They're going to go into their Monk of the Tenyi. Now, D-Fissure does hurt this deck a lot, but they had the out. They had the Vishuda. It sucks to suck. What can I say? They're going to go for the Mo Yi here. We're going to use our Effect Veiler here to negate the Mo Yi, hopefully putting their turn completely on hold. They do have Protos in the hand, so unless that last card in their hand is good, it's GG's. We're pretty much in a winning position, except it was Tactics. They have Tactics in their hand. If we had just activated Imperm instead, we would have been fine, but the last card in his hand was Tactics. Like, what are you supposed to do about that? He's going to drop the Protos, going to summon out the Long Wand, Synchro summoning out now into the Cheng Ying. So this is not good, right? This is what I would call not good. They're going to swing in, deal a whole bunch of damage here. 39, 17, 1k. It's going to bring us down to 200 life points, which kind of sucks, but it is what it is. We're going to draw in Sophia. Not even nearly enough for us to start comboing. So there you go. There is a decent handful of cards in the deck that simply don't do enough or really anything by themselves. The real Exosister cards you really want to be seeing are Ellis plus an Exosister, Stella plus an Exosister, Marfa on her own packs. All of those kinds of cards are really good, but by themselves don't do very much. So there you go. I didn't want to sell you this deck as if it's like unbeatable and super great and super top tier. It has its weaknesses. It has its bad hands. It's going to happen. As does any deck. Apart from tier elements, apparently. But anyway, let's get into the deck profile. Alrighty, now I have covered this deck a decent number of times in the past, but we are going to be going over it again. And it's really good. it's really fun as well. That's what I like about it. It's enjoyable to play as well as being pretty effective, right? That's the balance I like at striking. Get decent control while not being completely like dead in your hand. It's not set 5 pass. So yeah, I find this deck pretty enjoyable to play. Starting with a bunch of our hand traps, we got the double DD Crow, we got double Effect Veiler, double Max C, and double Ash Blossom. This can be any lineup of cards you want, any 8 cards there. We've also got double Infinite Impermanence, they can also be whatever you want, and double Called by the Grave. I mean, Called by the Grave is really good. I would say you kind of need Called by the Grave, honestly, because Ash really hurts this deck. So yeah, there you go. There's 10 slots, go nuts, do whatever you want. Even the armament isn't really all that necessary. I just like it. So you could argue that these can be cut as well, but we're gonna keep them in for now. You do you. This is the deck, the core of the deck that we're playing with. Starting off with a non-Exosister monster that you didn't see is the Zoroa, the Magistus of Flame, a level 4 tuner spellcaster. Basically, when this guy is summoned, you get to equip onto it a Magistus card from your extra deck. And then when you do, I believe you get to special summon a spellcaster from your hand or graveyard in defense position. So he's just an extender of sorts, if you will. An extra level 4 that you can use for your Exceed summons. He's just a decent extender, nothing really more than that. You've got Ellis. Ellis can special summon itself to the field so long as you control an Exosister. Stella can use its effect to special summon another Exosister from your hand. Irene, if you control another Exosister, you can place an Exosister card. With Irene, you can place an Exosister card from your hand to the bottom of your deck to draw one, so you basically just mulligan a card. Sophia lets you just draw a card, but only if you control another Exosister. And Marfa, being the most powerful of them, if you control no monsters, or if all of your monsters are Exceed monsters, you can special summon this card from your hand and an Ellis directly from your deck. During the turn you do that, you can only summon Exosister monsters, so do bear that in mind. And now all of these monsters have in common another effect. If your opponent moves a card out of their graveyard while any one of these Exosisters are face up, they can rank themselves up into an Exceed monster by themselves, which is pretty awesome. So if your opponent tries to move anything out of the graveyard, with Tearlaments for example, you're able to summon out any of these Exceed monsters, which have really powerful effects, like locking your opponent out of the graveyard, banishing opponent's cards, all of this really cool stuff. So do bear that in mind, they all have that effect. Marfa's effect is even more powerful, because with her effect, it doesn't matter which of the two of you moves something out of the graveyard. You could move it out of the graveyard if you were so inclined, and it would still trigger Marfa's effect. But with all of these other ones, your opponent has to be the one to do it. Then we've got the double shifter. Again, I know this is technically a hand trap, but it's just too good. It's just too good, I'm sorry. It's core. If you don't have it, don't play it, it's fine. You can play the deck without it, but you're missing out, man. You really are. If you don't have this card, if you plan on playing in this meta and not playing tier, shifter is going to be used in a lot of decks. So be ready to see it. Pot of Prosperity lets you banish cards from your extra deck to check that number of cards on the top of your deck and add one of them to your hand. Pretty decent. Bit of consistency. You're very rarely going to use your entire extra deck. We're playing like multiples of a bunch of cards, so you know you've got cards to banish. It's fine. D-Fissure, again, just a powerful floodgate. Anything sent to the graveyard is banished instead. Any monster specifically. Called by the Grave, banish a monster from your opponent's graveyard and negate its effects for the next 2 turns. Really powerful at the minute. It always has been super powerful, but it's even more powerful right now. Pax will grab any Exosister card from your deck to your hand. Pretty simple. Armament. Armament's a pretty interesting card. It allows you, during your opponent's turn only, to take one of your Exosister monsters and Exceed summon with it into a monster from your extra deck, which is pretty interesting. This card, it can be seen as a bit of a brick. Sometimes it is dead, but in the cases in which it's useful, it is super useful. So you maybe you want to play one of it to just be a search target off of Pax. I think 1 is fine. 2 is probably a bit much, but I do like the card. I do like it a lot. It is entirely up to you though. I would probably recommend playing at least one of it though, because it can be searched off of packs, and it's a really useful card. You don't want to be left in a situation where you've got like, I suppose if you've got packs, then why wouldn't you just search Marfa? I don't know. It's up to you. Do whatever you want. It's an interesting card, but it's not super like make or break. Vadis, your 2 trap cards. Vadis will special summon 2 Exosisters from the deck, but during the end phase they're shuffled back. So only use this if you know you're going to be able to use the 2 monsters you summoned, either because your opponent's playing a graveyard based strategy, or because you yourself have a way of utilizing them, like Armament or Returnia. So yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of this card, but it is nice to have at least one. Then we've got, of course, Returnia, the big bad of the deck. This card is incredible. So if all your monsters are Exosisters, target a monster or target a card your opponent controls or in your graveyard and banish it, then you get to apply one of the other effects. So you target a card and banish it, then you can either immediately exceed summon using monsters you control, like the ones you summon off of Vadis, or you can, if you've already exceed summoned that turn through the effect of Magnifica, for example, which we'll get to in a minute, then you get to banish an additional card your opponent controls without targeting. So under ideal circumstances, you basically get to banish 2 cards completely free of charge, which is absolutely amazing. So definitely, I would say at least 2 of. I think 2 of is fine. You could convince me to play 3. You could. I think it's that good. But that's the main deck. Again, the deck's really straightforward. It's really not that complicated. The cards in the extra deck as well, they're really not complicated. There's only 3 that you ever really use, and the rest of them are just sort of here and there. But we're going to talk about them all anyway. Omega is here purely as a generic level 8 synchro for on the off chance you need to synchro summon with Magistus. Never use them, ever. You can take this out. If you don't have this, replace it with something else. If you would rather play something else, take out Omega. It's not great in this deck. We've got the number F0 package, the Utopic Draco Future, of course. Draco Future, basically, if you have 2 Exceed monsters of the same rank, combine them into this guy, rank this guy up into your Draco Future. Once per turn monster negate, can't be destroyed by battle or card effects. Pretty decent boss monster, but like I said, you're not going to be using him a lot because on the turn you use Marfa's effect, you can only summon Exosisters. And to be honest, the effects of the other ones are kind of better, I'm not going to lie. So yeah, he's here because you can use him, and he's powerful, but you're probably not going to use him. So it's another one of those situations where if you don't have it, don't craft it just for this deck. Don't look at this and think, oh, I can't play this deck if I don't have Omega or this card. You're never going to use them. Abyss Dweller is another one of those cards where it's a good idea, but I've never used. Purely because of Marfa's effect locking us in the Exosisters. It's still a good one to have. This is a card, unlike the other ones, this is a card I would recommend crafting regardless of whether or not you're going to use it in this deck, because basically any deck that can summon level 4s is going to want this specifically for the tier limit matchup. So Abyss Dweller is going to be a really useful generic card just to have. So yeah, absolutely. If you don't have this, maybe you do want to craft this one for use not only here but in any deck that plays level 4s. Then we got the 3 copies of Michaelis. I know 3 copies of it, it's a pain, but it's just that good. You can get away with 2, I would say no less than 2 though. Can't be destroyed by battle from anything summoned from the graveyard, kind of meh. So once per turn, during the turn in which it is summoned, you can banish a card on your opponent's field, or in their graveyard. As an active effect, you can detach a material to search your deck for any Exosister spell or trap. So it's non-targeting banishment on the turn it's summoned, and on a second effect it lets you search for any spell or trap, which is dope. Typically you're going to grab Returnia, but there are a number of options. Then you've got Caspatel, the second best level 4, or rank 4. Yet again got the same destroyed by battle effect. On the turn it's summoned, neither player can special summon monsters from the graveyard for the rest of this turn, which is a decent effect. Especially if you summon it during your opponent's turn, but again, like I said, not super likely. Once per turn, you can detach a material to add an Exosister monster from your deck to your hand. So Michaelis searches spell or trap, Caspatel searches monster. Typically you want to do Caspatel first. If you haven't used Marfa already, you'll typically want to use her to grab Marfa. Marfa then is going to get you the materials for your Michaelis, so on and so forth. So yeah, Caspatel definitely two of. If you would like, you could take out an Omega and play like a third Caspatel. You totally could. It's probably better to play 3 of this than to play the Omega, if I'm being real. Then we've got the 1 copy of Jabreen. This card, I actually have to remind myself what it does. I use it so seldomly. If you control this card, it was Exceed Summon this turn. You can target an effect monster your opponent controls, negate its effects. So on the turn it's summoned, it's a quick play negate, which is interesting. You can also detach material. For the rest of the turn, all of your Exceed monsters will gain 800 attack points. Now that's not just ones you control at the point of her activating that effect. That's any Exceed monster you control for the rest of that turn, which is really good because that effect honestly is even better than the other effect, because that 800 attack can sometimes be the difference between lethal and not lethal. So Jabreen, I will definitely play at least 1 of. You're not going to use her a lot though, only here and there for that little 800 attack boost. Then you've got Asufel. So this card I have seen increased usage of from other players against tier. Unfortunately, I wanted to show off some more tier matchups, but we just didn't get them. We just didn't find any of them on the ladder, so it is what it is. On the turn it's summoned, neither player can activate card effects in the graveyard. That's why. So what people are doing is, under ideal circumstances, instead of using Caspatel and Michaelis on their first turn to go into Magnifica, they're instead using Caspatel and Asufel, or Michaelis and Asufel, so they can summon this card off of Magnifica instead, and essentially lock your opponent out of using the graveyard, which is pretty dope. I like it. You can also detach a material, target a monster your opponent controls, bounce it back to hand. Decent effect, decent card overall. A little bit better going second or first, you know what, it's up in the air. It depends on the matchup. Then we got 2 copies of Magnifica, the new boss monster, a rank 8, but don't worry, you're not using level 8s. You're instead going to use any 2 rank 4 Exosister Exceed monsters. It can make a second attack during each battle phase, and that's not just against monsters, so it can just attack twice, which is useful at 2800 attack. Once per turn, as a quick effect, you can detach a material to banish a card your opponent controls, so a quick play non-targeting banishment is awesome. It also has another effect where if your opponent activates a monster effect, you can return one of its materials back to the extra deck to then special summon that monster using this monster as its materials. So if you use, let's say, Michaelis and Caspatel for its summon, well then you get to bounce one of these 2 cards back to the extra deck to then summon them to the field to use their effects. So Michaelis gets its once per turn banish, Caspatel locks him out of summoning from the graveyard, the Asufel will stop them from activating effects in graves, so on and so forth. So you basically get the active on the turn of summoning effects of your Exosisters, as well as potentially their other effects as well. And that's after getting a once per turn banish, which is awesome. So yeah, absolutely playing 2 of this card. This card is incredible. Absolute game changer for Exosisters. Love it. And lastly, we've got 2 copies of Artemis, purely here for Zoroa. If you really want more room in the extra deck, you can cut the Zoroa. You do run kind of light on spellcasters though on level 4s then, so you might want to replace it with more level 4s. But it'll get you more room in your extra deck if you really need it, but you don't need it. It's fine. You'll live. You will survive. But anyway, that is the list. It's really not that complicated. It's not that far removed from what we were playing in the past. I'm going to very quickly load her back up so we can get a look at the full list as well, including the hand traps. But yeah, it's not that different than what we were playing in the past, but it is definitely more effective now than it ever has been. Love playing this deck, and if you like it too, let me know down below if you are a fellow fan of Exosisters, or maybe you're not and you want to pick it up because of this, and that's really cool. I would definitely recommend picking it up. It is a little pricey though. Do be aware of that. It is a touch pricey if you missed out on getting these cards when they first came out. But yeah. Otherwise, that's pretty much it. If you've got this far in the video and you haven't subscribed and liked the video, then I don't know what you want me to do or say. You know, you might as well if you've got this far, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.